Okay, so today we're talking about levels of abstraction. And abstraction is just a fancy way of saying examining a problem that's more complex and then just distilling it down into its more important components and getting rid of anything else. So in computer science, that comes up a lot. A lot of the times we have to make the code as efficient as we can, and oftentimes that means reducing the amount of lines that we use. For example, if you need to make a triangle, you need 3 lines, right? We all know that. So you may think to individually write out each one of those commands and just have that build the triangle for you. Or you could just use a for loop that does the same command 3 separate times, because instead of having redundant code, you just have the vital code that you really need and then just get rid of the rest. So fundamentally, that efficiency is what abstraction is all about. And another example of that you could use in other subjects is, for example, if you're talking about like civil engineering or other forms of mathematics, you may be using calculus to describe like the flow of water per se, or how much water is flowing here. So like you'd use like the mass flow equation to go and get all the stuff that you need, like your cross-sectional area, the speed of the water flow, how wide everything else is, or the pressure, the density of the water's under. And you've got all that information that you could use to describe how much water is ending up into the second reservoir. Like, for example, you have these 2 bottles of water right here. So I could take this bottle of water here and pour it into the second one. And if you're just using that higher level of abstraction, where you're basically just working with those higher level equations and everything, you can basically get an approximate answer of how much water has come into this bottle here. But that's not always necessary. Sometimes you may have situations where it bogs down the whole process. And instead of going through all the process of using differential calculus to describe it, you could simply just take a measurement of the initial volume of water and then subtract the current volume water from that, and that difference is just going to be the exact volume that flowed into here. Not only was using a different level of abstraction a better decision for getting a more accurate value, you saved a lot of time and effort, and you use far less assumptions. However, you may not always have the opportunity to just get the initial values of a reservoir. For example, you may have like a river that has changes all the time, banks wax and wane, water goes into the ground. It's really hard to get a really good initial value for how much water exists in that particular reservoir. So using the mass flow rate equation and using those higher levels of differential calculus is something that's going to be more appropriate in that scenario as opposed to this one. And I think fundamentally thinking through that process, thinking through those levels of abstraction, is what can really elevate a student's mental capacity for understanding those less than concrete concepts in mathematics. I think that taking a couple of those cues from computer science and applying them to examining mathematics and potentially other subjects that involve mathematics, because mathematics is basically pervasive, you can't really get away from it, but fundamentally improving a student's ability to comprehend those concepts is going to be such a transferable skill wherever you go. So I think that using levels of abstraction consciously, actively, is what's going to be better for a student's understanding of the content. And that's basically all I got to say today. So thanks for listening to my thoughts.